And it involves one of our most important presidents, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It's a large group of people. The Jewish community itself, filmmakers, historians, rabbis. The Holocaust is a gigantic subject which has really just taken up a tremendous amount of people's interest in history. And there's a large body of work that paints Franklin Roosevelt and his entire administration as anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, not caring, callous, and everything else. In the words of the most prominent historian in this field, David Wyman, and many of you, if you haven't read his book, many of you have been influenced by his book because his books are the seminal books. They're Paper Walls and The Abandonment of the Jews, which was a bestseller and goes on to be a big seller. He said the Roosevelt administration and the American people were the all too passive accomplices of the Nazis. Now, I wish he would choose his words more carefully because I'm a lawyer. An accomplice is a person who participates in the crime. So Wyman and his crowd, and I urge you to read everything they have to say on wymaninstitute.org, where they attack me and everybody else who defends Franklin Roosevelt, and it's very current. This thing in the New York Times came out, and I knew they'd have their website up by Sunday. So, of course, they're saying this is wrong. Everybody who defends Roosevelt is wrong. But, you know, that's their position. Abandonment of the Jews by Wyman, 6 million, while 6 million died by Arthur Morse. Many of you may remember that book. That was a bestseller also. And people who have followed them. So this point of view is pretty much taken over. It is essentially the prevailing view. The only problem is, after 6 years of researching this, I think they're absolutely wrong on every point. Not every point, because the State Department certainly had a lot of people in it that shouldn't have been there, but these are the main charges. I'm just going to talk about the main subjects that people are interested in. Roosevelt's failure to save the passengers on the St. Louis. There's the St. Louis. You remember the movie, The Voyage of the Damned. Some of the younger people in the audience don't, but if you don't, it's a good movie. Where we didn't save these people on this ship. And let's let the facts speak for themselves. I'm talking now about facts, not opinion. The St. Louis sailed from Hamburg, Germany in May of 1939. This is before World War II even started. And once again, this is where the chronology becomes very important. Hitler hadn't invaded Poland. The Holocaust, defined as the final solution, defined as the extermination of the Jews, had not even started. The concentration camps had not been built. So the passengers leave Hamburg, and the ship arrives in Cuba. The Jewish passengers had purchased visas which were very controversial. You know, a lot of the South American countries were selling visas to Jewish refugees anxious to get out, but the visas weren't legal. And Cuba was having a big problem with this. The State Department and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. I want to ask the people in the room, has anybody in the room ever heard of this group? The American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. If you have, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right. 7, 8, 9, 10, okay. The Joint is one of the most important Jewish service organizations, been around since 1914. But most people have never heard of it. And it plays a key role, in fact, it plays the key role in the whole St. Louis episode. They work day and night to save the passengers on the St. Louis. They sent a lawyer to Havana with a briefcase full of money, because when you're doing business with the Cubans, cash is a good way to start. You could bribe those officials in a minute. Henry Morgenthau, who was Jewish and who was Roosevelt's Secretary of the Treasury, was in charge of the Coast Guard, because until the day before yesterday, as you know, the Treasury Department was in charge of the Coast Guard. Very involved in it. Of course, their efforts failed. They couldn't convince the Cubans to take them, and they sailed back. 29 of the 936 passengers got off in Cuba. So I'm going to give you the count of what actually happened to the passengers on the St. Louis. Even though the Roosevelt administration urged the Cuban government to take them, they wouldn't. Now, with the active intervention of the State Department and the Joint put up the money, the State Department did the work, the St. Louis went to England, not to Germany. So when I go to cocktail parties, people tell me the ship went back to Hamburg and all the Jews went to Auschwitz. Well, this is, is mixed up talk. The ship went to England, where 288 of the 907 passengers disembarked and survived the Holocaust. And it pains me to say, particularly to Jewish people in the office, that one of the key people in this was Joseph P. Kennedy, the man everybody loves to hate. And Joseph P. Kennedy, who was definitely an anti-Semite and hated Roosevelt and loved the Nazis, but he didn't want to have a war. He didn't want his children in a war, and he didn't want to see the Germans and the British and the Americans fighting over these silly passengers on the St. Louis. So he helped arrange to get those people off the ship. I'm not saying people always acted out of good motives, but the fact is they acted. The remaining 619 disembarked at Antwerp, not in Germany, and went to France, Belgium, and Holland. Now, I read a book from one of these authors, and I've taken after all the authors because I'm a lawyer. I'm not an academic. If they write silly things, I mention it, and I mention their name and their book and the page number, so you can follow me. They have not taken kindly to this. In fact, one of my friends said, "Why does this guy write these kind of books?" He says, "He's a divorce lawyer. He's not really a historian." And, but I don't think these guys should be getting away with this stuff. If they want to attack Franklin Roosevelt, then make your case, okay? So they have been really angry at me. I mean, I'm so proud of myself. When they attacked the Roosevelt Library, they only had 25 of their guys sign a petition. When they attacked me, they had 55. So the 619 disembarked in Antwerp and went to France, Belgium, and Holland. And you can go to the library and read all you want. You won't find any different facts than these, except in some books who say the ship went back to Germany and the Jews went to the concentration camps. Okay. The leading authorities on the St. Louis estimate 365 of the 619 who disembarked at Antwerp survived the war. Now, this comes from a book by Ogilvie and Miller called Refuge Denied, published by the Holocaust Museum. Now, you can't beat that. The Holocaust Museum will spend whatever is necessary to prove whatever point they want to make. And the point they wanted to do is they wanted to follow every passenger on the St. Louis, and they did. They followed every passenger on the St. Louis. So this is not, when my book came out, this book had not been published. But I estimated the numbers who would have survived. Actually, my estimation was too low. More people survived than I thought. But anyway, according to the Holocaust Museum, 365 disembarked. And 254 of the passengers died in the Holocaust. The passengers knew that the Americans had saved them. And that's the point I want to make. I don't know why these historians love to attack my country. My father served in the Navy in the Pacific. And all of his friends and all the men I grew up with were in the Army, in the Navy, and the Air Force. My father-in-law flew combat mission over Berlin. I mean, literally. He's a 19-year-old boy who flew a P-51 Mustang. Now, we defeated Hitler, and we stopped the Holocaust. And why these people want and love to run down America, I cannot understand. So what happened was the people in the St. Louis knew that the American government, the American Jewish community, the Joint, had saved everybody on the St. Louis. They did not go back to Germany. Some were in England, and the rest were in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, which, by the way, were free and independent countries. And nobody in their right mind thought that Hitler was going to invade and conquer France and the Netherlands, which had been neutral in World War I, literally within a year, year and a half. It was unthinkable. France was a great nation at one time. I'm really anxious for them to send troops to Iraq. I mean, it took the Germans 2 weeks to conquer France with an army. They had a bigger army than the German army. And they lay down and died. Okay, fine.